Hello, everyone that's joining. We will start in about 1 minute. We're just letting everyone in. I don't know if you're based in London, but it's really hot. I think, Paige, you look like you're sweating as much as I am.
Listening.
Yeah, we get people all around the world in our webinar, so it could be really cold somewhere, and they could be annoyed at us for moaning about how hot it is. Cool. Let's start. Welcome to our webinar on stress management solutions and the role of wellbeing champions in the education sector. I'm Matt. I'm co-founder of the Happiness Index. And if we just move forward to the next slide, please. So I've introduced myself. I'm Matt. You'll recognize me from lots of our webinars before. And I've got two amazing guests with me today going to help us navigate this really tough conversation. So Laura, I'm going to go to you first to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Laura Nwanya. I'm currently an assistant head in a North London primary school, but I'm also the founder and host of the Bee and Willow podcast. So I'm really passionate about staff wellbeing and what we can do to retain amazing teachers in the profession.
Brilliant. And last but not least, over to Paige.
I'm Paige Haines, Senior Customer Success Manager here at the Happiness Index. And my job is essentially just to look after all of our lovely customers and partners, making sure that they're doing the most around sort of their happiness and engagement. So yeah, thanks for the intro, Matt.
Thanks, Paige. So Laura's going to help us understand what it's like on the front line, and Paige is going to help us understand what people and our customers are doing about it every single day. So we'll move forward from that. We'll bring the team back in a second. I've been asked to do a little introduction to the Happiness Index. So for those that don't know, the Happiness Index is an employee engagement and happiness platform. We're very close to having a data set that includes about 4 million employees now. So if you're trying to understand how your people think and feel, and you believe that understanding that could make a difference in your organization, you can book a demo using that QR code. It's the only bit we'll talk about the platform and the product today, but everything that we share with you from an insight perspective will have come from those 33 million data points. So if I just scroll forward, I will show you a little bit of the background around our thinking and some of the information that has shaped our thinking today. So I won't go through all of these stats, but 78% of head teachers report feeling stressed at the moment. One of the numbers in there that I'd love to get Laura's opinion on. So it's 36% of teachers reported experiencing burnout. That's actually below the average. I actually think it's higher than that. Laura, what's your
I
view?
think it must be higher than that. I'm not sure how it could be that teachers, without wanting to offend other professions, have got that higher level anyway. It's there's an expectation that they should be working evenings and weekends anyway. So therefore, they have a higher pain threshold, should we say, to it, and they wouldn't class themselves as burnt out.
Yeah. So we'll leave those stats. We're going to send this presentation over, so I won't go through all of those today. So we'll move forward to the next slide, and we'll start to get into solutions and what we do at the Happiness Index to move people and help them. So if we just move forward a slide. Everything that we do and use at the Happiness Index is based on a neuroscience base. Obviously, we feed the data into that. But one of the things that you'll hear Paige and I talk about today is our instincts, our emotions, our rational thoughts, and our reflective thoughts. Most surveys that companies use are rational based. So you'll get an understanding of how your employees think. But it's now the more that we advance and the more we look at our data, understanding how your people feel is a huge driver of performance. Lots of organizations don't like to look into this sometimes because what is under the hood can often be negative. But our view is that unless you get into what's not working, it's really, really difficult to fix it and move stuff forward. So that's just a little bit about our thinking. If we just move forward to the next slide. For the purposes of today, if we talk about engagement, we talk about what your brain needs at work. And if we're talking about happiness, we talk about what your heart needs. Some people are used to bracketing everything into engagement, but we purposely separate out the two. And Paige and I will touch on that shortly. So if we just move forward to the next slide. Today, one of the areas we'll focus on is relationships. These is our model of top drivers of engagement and top drivers of happiness. Engagement is the pink on the right and happiness is the yellow on the left. But just for our newer listeners, relationships is the top driver of happiness. So if at home or at work, your relationships have been impacted, it can really impact your own happiness. As we know from previous webinars, happiness drives performance. So we try and show through data, it's not like happiness is the fluffy bit and performance is the serious bit. The two are really related. And we'll get into some discussions shortly. So we just move forward. If we could just come out of the slides, I'm just going to bring the team in and we'll go to some of the data in the slides afterwards. So Laura, just whilst we come out of the slides, obviously you mentioned the podcast. I just want to sort of bring you in at the beginning. Like, why are you passionate about wellbeing in the education sector? Like, why does it matter? Because you could just not care, couldn't you? You could just turn up at work, you could get your money, you go home, and you wouldn't have to set up the podcast and everything. But what led you to caring about all that stuff?
So I think over the years, I've been in education now we're coming into my 14th year. I've seen the well-being of teachers go down and down and down every single year. And in particular, I've seen really good, really amazing teachers, experienced teachers who have got no confidence. And it's because of those accountability policies where everyone is working towards these goals of stats and tests and things. No one's accountable for their own teaching practice anymore. And I think it comes back to what you were saying with the relationships, that those relationships are so important within schools, but where so many people are overworked, it's hard to build them now. And although school budgets and the policies linked to Ofsted and national curriculum tests, they are difficult to influence from within the profession. What we can influence is ourselves, the way we lead, the way we support, and the way that we treat each other. And I think I just wanted to encourage people to start thinking about that again, to move away from the data and to start being a little bit more human. And I think in particular, I'm sure you've probably looked into this, that the biggest group of teachers leaving are those that have only been within the profession for 5 years or less. They come into it,
shocking, isn't it?
And they leave very quickly. So my aim behind the podcast as well was to get to those teachers as soon as I could, as soon as they start and they become their early careers teachers, and equip them with the skills for the stress management now, so that they can go on and have careers where they feel confident and know they're doing a good job.
Yeah. And I suppose that we would define you as like a wellbeing champion, but schools have wellbeing champions. Do you think that's important to have people championing wellbeing in schools?
It is, but it's important as well that it's not a tick box exercise. They need to be people who are genuinely interested in their staff's well-being, and it can't be what is well-being to me isn't necessarily well-being for another person. So my well-being is all created about how I can spend time with my family yet still have a successful career. That might not be relevant to somebody else. And you need to be, if you are a well-being champion, you need to be someone who can build the relationships first and foremost to understand what makes that person tick, what makes them drive, what is supportive to them, because it's not a one size fits all sort of thing.
Yeah, no, and Paige, I'd love to bring you in on that point, because you're working with organisations that want to improve well-being and happiness in the organisation. Just want to bring on Laura's point of it can mean different things to different people. Like, how do you navigate that when you're working with customers in the education sector?
I think going back to your point, Laura, in terms of what you said around obviously people needing different things and what well-being, it means different things to different people. What I've seen work well with customers I've worked with, and I'm working with currently a customer that's part of a sort of group of schools, is having a different sort of makeup of wellbeing champions. So I know that some organizations might have just your one wellbeing champion, but that's not necessarily going to work. Just going back to what you said, you need a broad spectrum of different type of people that would definitely help that sort of that would sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Different types of wellbeing champions in different areas of the school or different businesses as well. See that, generally speaking, that works quite well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think the role of wellbeing champion as well is quite often given to a teacher who's already based in the classroom and quite overworked and stressed anyway, so may not always be able to be approachable. But there was some really interesting research that was done to say that in order to keep people in the profession, coaching is key. Coaching and mentorship is key, which a wellbeing champion essentially would be supporting them with. But actually, it was more successful if that was with a senior leadership member. So they could build that connection with them. They could then have the positive praise and any feedback that they needed, but also that person was maybe more able to influence the policies and practices that were in the organisation anyway.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Laura. And Paige, when you're sort of using data to bring this to life for organisations in the sector, have you found it any of the messages hard for people to take? Because this is quite a serious subject, isn't it? People think of it as, again, like this is sometimes well-being is like the fluffy bit. Like, how have you used data to bring alive these serious situations?
Well, obviously for those in the audience that are not aware, those that sort of take the surveys through the happiness index, there's scope to leave verbatim comments. And I think what you're alluding to is you can get specific examples where, you know, the well-being of some employees may be at threat. And when we're sort of combing through the data, obviously all completely anonymous, some of it can be quite shocking, especially with the sort of the stakeholders that I tend to work with, you know, in schools and different organisations. So I think initially it can be a bit of a surprise, some of the feedback that's given, but it's about really understanding why people are leaving that feedback, and sort of really sort of getting down to the bottom of it. And you can start to see those trends as well. So, you know, if there's groups and clusters of employees all starting to say the same thing, they're going to realise that, you know, change needs to happen.
Yeah, I remember, and I think it's sometimes those, because the big level data is great, but sometimes it's one comment that sums up like how a lot of people feel. This is a different sector, but we had someone on from the hospitality sector, and the comment said something like, "I can't be a mum whilst I work here," and they were really struggling to get some of the senior leaders to understand they needed to introduce flexi time. So all of the work was focused on the advantages of flexi time, but it took like a really human story for the leadership team to read and go, "Oh, okay, I can actually see the impact here. Like flexi time is just not about when someone can turn up for work; it's actually impacting someone's ability to be a mum." And once the senior leadership team saw that one comment, like it totally brought it to life and stopped it being like a functional conversation.
I think what it is that the education system is so underfunded. This is an accumulation of, you know, recent changes with government. We're underfunded in terms of social care and social services and things like that, and all of those community projects that were pulled. That means that those underfunded public sectors and diminished social services has put a greater impact now on schools. And I can understand from a senior leadership perspective that in order for us to really support people's well-being, the biggest gift is time. We need to give people time to do the workload, to do all of those things, and that costs money, and there isn't enough money in the system. So I think it's quite scary for people to dip into this because they know that there's going to be work to do at the end of it, and there's probably going to be a financial part to play. But actually, if you put the finances into it now by offering things like flexi time and stuff like that, that you then haven't got to put it into recruitment, into retraining your teachers, into that constant churning of staff and staff turnover is so costly. just to advertise for a teacher is expensive as well. So I think it's long-sighted. If you could put the money and finances into it now, it would have more of an impact and save in the long run.
Yeah, vote Laura, that's what I say.
Thanks.
Laura, just on examples where you've seen issues, have you got an example where you've seen an issue where a group of people have seen an issue, identified it, and done something about it that was interesting? Or does a lot of stuff in schools just get spotted but not done? Do you have any stories of a group of people coming around an issue?
There are some amazing initiatives now that are out there that I've seen some of the big Matts doing as well. Just small things like having PPA time at home, that especially when you talk about being a parent, like I say, that's something that I am particularly passionate about. It allows that teacher to go home, to collect their child from school, do the school run for the day, have the conversation with other parents as well, get to socialize and meet their child's class teacher. As a teacher, you never get the opportunity to meet your own child's class teacher because you're never there for drop off or pick up. So allowing your staff and trusting them enough to go home during their PPA time is just really simple, and it doesn't cost that much anyway. It wouldn't cost anything to just say they can take that time and trust that they'll be doing the work at a different point. I've heard of schools introducing what they call a soft start. So allowing parent teachers to come in a little bit later one day a week, so that they come in for 9 o'clock or 9:10, so that they can do the school drop-offs as well. Some Matts are really encouraging flexible working, because again, it comes down to what's right for one isn't right for another. There's a lot of teachers are coming into the profession wanting to accelerate, wanting to progress in their career, and they might want to be studying for a master's or some sort of degree, adding on to their degree. Giving them a 4-day week and supporting them with that course is also a great incentive.
Yeah, because I suppose that's the challenge of schools, isn't it? A lot of it is inflexible, whereas an organisation like the Happiness Index, let's say we're competing for the same talent, we can be more flexible, or the perception is we can be more flexible to attract the best talent. So I suppose if schools can't innovate in that area, it becomes really difficult to, as you say, attract and retain talent.
I think it is becoming, because wellbeing is such a big issue. It's talked about on a daily basis in schools amongst staff, that when people are leaving, the first thing they're looking for is, what are they doing for wellbeing for their staff? What is going to attract me to that school to work in? And you need to really find out how your staff are genuinely feeling. You don't want a staff force that can't approach you, because if you don't know what the problems are, you can't solve them. At least this way, if they can genuinely tell you how they are feeling, you can solve that problem and attract more staff in.
Yeah, I think that brings you in nicely, Paige. It's like, we try and say it to all our clients, Laura. It's like, it's not like about good feedback or bad feedback. It's just all feedback that once you're aware of, you can work out what you can fix and what you can't. Paige, can you just talk us through about like some examples of how customers do that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, I'm just like, obviously you're in it every day, aren't you? You're working with clients, you're getting their data, you're going through their reports, you're seeing them fix stuff. Like Laura's talking about on the ground, like the impact of flexible working. But like, what's it actually like working with customers, bringing out this data?
I love it, and I think the journey that from start to, well, it never finishes actually, is amazing. Like I work with some customers that are apprehensive to hear feedback. I think that tends to be the biggest bit of feedback that at least I get, and that's the feeling that, they really want to work with us to make meaningful change, but they're also scared as well at the same time about some of that feedback that they're going to get. I think that's just probably one of the biggest challenges initially, is to make sure that, that they trust the data, they trust the feedback that they're getting, and then the most important part is, after they get all that wonderful feedback and data, is making sure that they're acting upon it, and that it's not just left there as a tick box exercise or that sort of thing. Is making sure that those action plans are delivered in the right way.
Yeah, I think trust. You both mentioned trust. Interestingly, Laura, you sort of mentioned it as an outsider to the education sector, and someone the way that I view it with my team is like, if I can't trust someone, they shouldn't be working here. So therefore, like, I don't need to be checking up on what they're doing because they're all professional people.
Mm.
And as an outsider, I look at teachers and think, well, I trust them with my children. They're the most trustworthy of all the people. So I would think, well, that's a population of people that should simply be trusted.
Mm.
Like, what
Unfortunately,
is
I think
the
that's one of the, when you look at the drivers to people leaving the profession, pay is actually very far down the list. Although I know that teachers were in the papers for striking, it wasn't striking necessarily because of pay, it's because it was underfunded pay and there wasn't enough money to pay. It meant taking more away from the children in order for us to have a pay rise. The biggest thing is the trust over our work. I don't know any other profession where on a regular basis someone comes in to watch you do what you're doing, to observe you and give you feedback and then tell you ways that you can improve, where you have to produce sets of data, weekly, monthly, just reams and reams of data. It's a constant being checked on. And I think what's happening is certain trusts have got a very standardized way of teaching. And if you don't fit into that standardized way that they want you to teach, everyone's doing it very differently, but they want sort of consistency across their school, then you are not able to teach and be the teacher that you originally got into the profession for. It takes all of that trust away. And I think that's one of the biggest drivers going out that people are thinking.
It's such a good point, and I just want to just touch on some good practice. So for those that don't know me, my partner she works in a school, but she's working for a head that she's always raving about, which with teachers you don't always hear that. But I always say, like, why is this guy so good? And she says, because he just communicates with us like we're adults, and every now and then she will like read out like maybe an email that he's sent. And like, there was a scenario, I don't know how widespread it was, but I think the government messed up like the funding numbers, and it meant like schools had a shortfall in how much they thought they had.
Yep.
And he just, I'm sure this is widespread, and you can touch on that, Laura, but like, she just read out parts of his email. It was just brilliant. He just acknowledged how bad a situation it was, the issues that come with it, and what they can do, and also offered other people to come forward if they've got suggestions on how we can help. And she finds it refreshing that a head is so open on comms. In your opinion, Laura, how important is communication of leaders in schools?
It's the biggest thing. It comes back to what you're saying about relationships and happiness. If you don't have that relationship with your head teacher, where you can give an opinion and it's valued or it's responded to at least, then it creates for a really unhappy workplace. In terms of where my head teacher now, the reason why I really love where I'm working at the moment, she leads by example. She leaves early to go and collect her own children as well. And so therefore there isn't a fear from me, I'm going to leave at 4 o'clock today. I'm not going to stay until 5:30. I want to do this. I want to have this after school club. And I think that sums it all up. You need to lead by example, have those relationships, and your staff needs to be able to communicate with you. Again, coming back to that point, communicate with you when it's going great, but also when it isn't going so great as well.
Yeah. Paige, just touching on HR professionals in the education sector, like what sticks out for you when you're working with your customers that we can all learn from, that the listeners can learn from, that they're doing well?
Just quickly, just before I answer that, I want to go back to Laura, what you said about the communication piece, and yourself, Matt. So my partner as well, she's a teacher, so she works in the education sector, and at the start of the school year, a new assistant head came in and tried to change everything, and the communication style was maybe not akin to what the school was used to, and I saw a dramatic change in my partner when she come home from work, stressed. She felt like her capacity was not there, all of those sort of things. And it was just sort of coincided with a new change in management, essentially. So yeah, and that communication piece was yeah, going back to that, the communication style changed throughout the school. And it was just, again, interesting to see as a partner of someone who teaches, I saw the change myself. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in.
It's a but Paige, it's a fascinating observation, isn't it? Because structurally, by the sounds of it, the school hasn't changed. Like it's still got like the same premises. It's probably got a similar budget. It's probably got similar teachers. But the way the head is communicating is having a direct impact on your partner's well-being, which I think that's a huge takeaway for anyone listening today.
Definitely.
So can you remember the question I set now? So Paige, onto HR professionals, anything that they do well that we can learn from?
So look at the data, and what I mean by that is those that you know, if you are listening to your employees and you know collecting feedback, is really look at you know the data and listen to what your employees are saying. I think that's really important. I know it sounds basic, but I think that it sometimes gets forgotten about because I know obviously you know you work in the education sector and it is busy and you can get sort of wrapped up in just doing your day to day. But yeah, taking that step back and just making sure that you're listening to your employees and doing the right thing as well. I think that's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I think that's something we talk a lot about, our CEOs that we work with at the Happiness Index and head teachers, which is unless you're breaking child labour laws, everyone in your team is an adult. So all the issues the school is dealing with, the teachers also dealing with those situations at home, but they're just on a different scale, aren't they? Everyone's dealing with a budget at home. Can they afford this? Can they afford that? They're dealing with communication issues within their family, within their friends, all the stuff that you're experiencing as a leader in your organization. It's not alien to the people that work for you, so they can contribute to that. Just moving forward to measurement, Laura, obviously you've set this up because you want to change things. Like,
Yes.
how are you going to know? How are you going to know in 5 years' time if you've if focusing on it? Like, have you got any thoughts on measurement?
Yeah, no, I really don't, because I always set it up with, if I can help one person have a better day, that's enough for me. I get so much out of doing it anyway, for myself, which sounds quite selfish, that I knew that I've had people feedback to me and say, oh, I listened to that podcast and that really helped me, or that's given me an idea of how I can change things a little bit, or I listened to that top tip this week, and that's enough for me. I think as long if I can make one person a happier teacher, I know that that is then impacting that class and those children within that class, and the knock-on effect of that is making their parents happier. Everyone's a little bit happier, right?
Yeah, no, it's great. We're just going to do a quick poll on that, Laura. Kashi, can you just bring up a poll on how do you measure well-being? I think it's something for the panelists. So you're just going to, sorry, for the audience, you're going to see on your screen now. So how do you currently measure your staff well-being? If you could just pop some data in there, that would help us respond in the follow-up as well.
Can I just say that with this measuring well-being, I know that a lot of schools kind of send out a Google form.
Yeah.
People are teachers and support staff are very hesitant to actually answer these forms truthfully, because they don't believe it's anonymous. It links back to their emails and things, and therefore you do not get a true reflection of how your staff are feeling. And actually, it's the people who don't answer this survey that you probably really want to get in and talk to, the ones that aren't responding to Google forms, because they're the ones.
It's a really good point, Laura. And it's kind of, that's one of the main reasons education establishments use the happiness index. Because even when we launched it, we gave the example, if the head of a school was to call Paige and say, can you tell me who made this comment about mental health in the school? Paige wouldn't be able to. So he wouldn't, and two, he shouldn't, because that's the whole point. It allows people to actually discuss how they feel. There is actually a feature in the platform for really serious situations where someone can have an anonymous conversation through the platform. But that's where we think an independent organisation is really important, because you're right, it's not just schools. Every single organisation in the world, if it goes on Google Forms or it's an email, people think, oh, is someone really going to find out what I've said? And people fear that. Sorry, Paige, I think you were going to say something on that.
I know you just hit the nail on the head there, and it comes back to that trust element as well. I, I don't blame people, especially if they're filling out a Google Forms, to feel like they can't trust that process. I would probably be the same as well initially, and I would be apprehensive about leaving honest feedback. So yeah, 100%. That's why those in the education sector and outside use tools, such as the happiness index, making sure that it's completely anonymous. And I think through that they feel like they can leave honest feedback in the right way.
Yeah, so we're just going to show some data. We're just going to bring the presentation back up, Kasia, if you can hear us. I just want to show everyone on the top drivers of happiness on our triangle, how the education sector varies to different sectors. So we're just going to bring the triangle up, which has got all the drivers of happiness and engagement in, and we're just going to show you how that varies to other sectors. So if we just wait 1 second, Kasia will bring that up. So interestingly, relationships, which is the top driver, schools are actually similar to the rest of every other industry. Where it scores really low is enablement. So I think that probably fits to what Laura was saying around budgets. So in there, you've got workload, resources, and collaboration. So schools, the education sector, are 0.5 below what the average is. I'll just pick out a couple of others. I think safety is an interesting one, because within safety is things like psychological safety. We would say to anyone that's listening, although there's many different drivers of happiness and engagement, and although we've said relationships is the #1 driver, safety is always the place to start, and it always from a psychological safe perspective, which is if you've got people joining your organization and they don't feel free to be able to be themselves, you're going to struggle to get to all these other lovely factors on here. So
it's actually what we say in the classroom as well. If you don't create a safe environment, those children are never going to learn and thrive. And it's funny how we say it for the children, but then we kind of forget it's so important for us as adults.
It's such a good point, Laura, because before, when I was doing my research for this, I just went and looked at random school in the areas. I went and looked at their websites, and they all talk about factors related to the children, which I understand. So they talk about things like student happiness, but I couldn't find one website that talked about the well-being and happiness of the teachers, which I know that I've got quite an extremist view, because I'm thinking about the happiness of employees all the time. But if you're a parent looking at a school and you know that the happiness of the employees drives performance, actually, when you're thinking, is my child going to get a good education? You actually need to be asking those questions, like when you go on your school tours, like, how happy are the teachers here? What's the well-being of the teachers like? Because you're not going to get those exam results from stressed out teams. So all the data and everything that you can see on the screen is going to come over. So we'll come out of the presentation. So you'll get this presentation, so people don't need to screenshot the stats. So we're just going to go into summary. Laura, just paint as what the future could look like. Like what could the education sector look like? Like how could it? I want to leave everyone on a positive. Like what does a thriving educational sector look like, where people want to work and stay in it?
I do genuinely believe we are on the cusp of change. I think it is going to change. I think there's going to be a massive shift, like how people say that this all kind of started with the beginning of Ofsted, I think it's, and all those policies. I think it was the Education Act in 1988 that people started to feel deprofessionalized. And I feel that now, with so many things that have happened recently in the media and also with COVID and things, that there's going to be a shift in another direction. Teaching was always the profession that you went to as a parent because it was the convenient option. It allowed you to have that flexibility. And so I think what's going to happen is schools are going to get it right. They're going to start being flexible with their working. They're going to give people opportunities to progress in their career as well. They're going to focus on the well-being of staff. And it's those schools that do it and get ahead of the game that are going to attract those amazing teachers and retain them at their schools, and are eventually going to do so well when it does come down to, unfortunately, I hate to say it, when it comes down to being Ofsted inspected, it is the well-being of your school that is going to have the ultimate outcome.
Yeah, I love that. So in summary, you're saying the schools that look after their people are going to attract the best talent and overall deliver the best results.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a positive future, Laura. I like it. Paige, how do you want to see schools and the education sector to using data to help with Laura's vision?
Just the first step is listening to your employees. I said it earlier on, it's really, really important. And like I said, it shouldn't go unnoticed. And sometimes I think it's taken for granted. So was it using tools like the happiness index is the first step. And that first step, I think, is the biggest step initially. And then after that, you get to work with fantastic people like me. But yeah, it's no, but it is really, really important to listen to your employees. That's, like I said, sometimes I think it's undervalued, but that's the way to go, and that's the first step.
Brilliant. Laura, Paige, you've both been fantastic. I reckon we could have done 4 hours, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface on all these points.
No,
But
thank you so much. Honestly, I've really appreciated the chance to speak about it and get the message out there a bit more.
No, we appreciate both of you doing us on such a hot day, and thank you to all our listeners. The slides will be on the way out, but if you've got questions for either Laura or Paige, email them in, contact us, and we'll get them to Laura and Paige, and hopefully we can answer them for you.
Right,
thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Cool.